Hello? Hello? Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for making the time. We're going to start in 1 minute here. Sorry for the technical difficulty. I'm going to mute and wait till 11. Okay, it's 11 now. Okay, great. Thank you very much for taking the time to attend my presentation. I have my screen shared, so I was going to start. I've got about a 15-minute PowerPoint presentation. If any of you have questions along the way, I will open the floor up at the end, but if you want, feel free to, I've got my chat window open to put or write a question in there, and I'll stop and try to address the question at the time. All right, great. So I assume everyone can see my screen. Today's presentation is going to be around linear lighting. Specifically, I'm going to talk about trends in linear lighting now, and talk a little bit about our company, Lux Illuminaire, some of the uses of linear lighting, both past and what I see going forward. Hopefully, it'll be beneficial to you. I have, as you can see on the first page here, my email address. And if there's any questions afterwards, obviously, for the Western folks will be there to answer any questions, but I can field any questions specifically to the presentation today and or questions on products. Okay, great. Well, let me get started. I wanted to start by giving a brief introduction for those of you who aren't familiar with Lux Illuminaire and our company. We actually are a BAA, Buy America Act compliant factory in Indiana. We're specifically in northern Indiana, about 30 minutes north of the Michigan border. We, being a Buy American Act manufacturer, we do most of our processes and in-house, assembly. We miter cut and weld all of our extrusions in-house. We paint in-house. We also do all of our testing. We have our UL lab in our factory. We've been an OEM manufacturer for other folks for the last 20 plus years. The factory actually has other business units that's been manufacturing in northern Indiana since the 50s, so we've been around a very, very long time. It gives us a lot of flexibility on projects. Also wanted to comment that with all the craziness that's going on right now, with the coronavirus, our factory is open. Our quick ship program is still in operation, which about 90% of our products are on our quick ship program, which is a 10-day quick ship coming out of northern Indiana. So it's about a 3-day transport time to California. But we give a lot of flexibility on projects because of the fact that we manufacture everything there. So there's something to keep in mind. Also, and you see in the bottom here, our 48-hour process for shop drawings is applicable on your project. So, you can, I know that on projects with linear lighting, there are many cases where wiring and layout of long runs, particularly if you're using sensors, is really, really critical. And I know some factories make customers wait extended period of times to get their drawings out. We're not that factory. Okay, so the learning objectives today, as I mentioned, is to talk about linear lighting, talk a little bit about the general use of lighting, but also get into maybe some general ideas of lighting design when using linear lighting. We're talking about lighting not only just illuminating a room, illuminating horizontal surfaces, desks, and office desks and things like that, but also vertical illumination, walls, washing and grazing, and that type of thing. Okay, so no discussion on lighting or illumination would be complete unless you talked about layers of light. I think the foundation of how lighting design is approached by specifiers, using both ambient, accent, and task lighting to light a room. Ambient lighting requirement for foot candle requirements on various surfaces obviously is very, very important. Accent lighting, very nice for aesthetics, but also giving you, max and min ratios to give you a little bit of drama in a space, and also task lighting. You'll see today in my presentation, you'll see a lot of slides that are around office lighting, which, good office lighting applications use all three. I know it can be challenging with Title 24 with compliance of power density codes, but can be achieved with the right luminaire. So you can see in this picture here, this is our AX 5 fixture. This actually has an indirect component as well as a direct. So you can get that sort of ambient lighting without having to have a cave effect or dark ceilings, or you can also have indirect illumination from one fixture as well. Okay, I think pictures always tell 1,000 words. You can see from this, both these pictures here, the difference between indirect and direct. The top picture being a bunch of downlights in a space. You're sure you're getting the foot candle requirements in that space. However, it's very, very glary. And it's really the issue when you're talking about direct illumination is glare. No one likes to sit under a glary light source. We've been accustomed in schools, classrooms, and offices up until now. But using LEDs or LED linear lighting, you can diffuse lighting using indirect illumination. You can see from this picture here where you have the foot candle requirements on the ground, but at the same time, you're getting a very, very nice source of light that's soft. All right, so indirect illumination can occur not just from things like cove surfaces that are illuminating down into a space, but also illuminating walls, or what we call vertical illumination. And I'll show you a few products on how that's done. So whether you're illuminating the room from the wall, or you have a surface area that you want to show off on a wall, say wall washing, for example, which we'll talk about, that can be achieved from your vertical illumination. Now, perimeter lighting, we do a lot of Lux Illuminaire office applications, A-class or B-class office applications that use perimeter lighting. I'll show you two ways of perimeter light. This picture here shows a light that is against the wall. The way we do it is the luminaire actually mounts to the wall, but also can be tied to the ceiling. You have both options for a project. This is just using a standard diffuse lens to illuminate the surface of this office or this wall to help illuminate the office. But perimeter lighting is something very, we do a lot of banks, a lot of high-end offices that do use perimeter lighting along with general illumination with hanging pendant luminaires or surface mount luminaires. All right, so I wanted to talk about some of the benefits. I know for those of you who've been using LED linear lighting, this is a bit redundant. However, I still see a lot of specifications that have, a lot of them are centered on schools, but I still see a lot of applications that are using fluorescent, even yet still today. You still hit your power density specs under Title 24 using LEDs and not fluorescent. So there are many benefits of that, but one of which is power density. The LEDs are more efficient. LEDs last a lot longer. And this number continues to go up, doesn't it? So the rated life of a fixture. So those are things that you can realize from LEDs. And one of the areas, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes on a few applications that I think are really great about LEDs and have been the case for many years now, is that you can do optics. And one of the cool things about optics today, this right here is what they call a TIR optic. So it's a tall optic that goes over to an LED that beam shapes the lights, whether it's a symmetric or an asymmetric, for example. But some of the areas that have been changing with linear lighting up until now is you're able to do the same beam shaping, but with much smaller optics, whether it be a rectangular type of optic, or, and we have in some of our fixtures, film. So a thin film, sort of similar to it's like a bright view film that they've had in the past to help diffuse light. You're actually able to beam lights with film. So that allows luminaire manufacturers like ourselves to create smaller profiles of the fixtures where you would normally have to have a tall fixture to fit that optic into it. So that's pretty cool. Dimming control. Obviously, under Title 24 here in California, obviously you have a majority of projects now that require daylight harvesting, occupancy sensing, and whatnot. And so control is a very, very big part of that. So, you know, there are many benefits with LEDs that you can control them, unlike you were able to do before. And color shifting over a lifetime, that not only means the color shifting that happens over a life of a product that goes maybe from cool to warm, but also means color shifting that occurs over the LED color over angle, which I'll talk about in a second. Track lighting. Track lighting has, and I still see quite a few projects using track, obviously under Title 24 or even under ASHRAE. It's really hard to meet a spec when it comes to track in terms of code compliance and how many watts can be generated off a single track, and dealing with that track and that requirement in a space. What's great about a linear product is that you can fit everything you need into that product, whether it be you know, emergency battery backup, multi-channels of control if you want to control the up and down separately. If you wanted to have sensors, multiple sensors on one run, you wanted to put optics on certain sections and not on other sections. So really a linear lighting now, and you don't have to worry about the code compliance that you would have under a track system. So, you know, LED, hopefully, and we've seen lots of specs as such, but is eliminating the need for having track lighting in the space. Okay, so let's talk about common applications and how it would be used. I talked about perimeter lighting a second ago. Wall grazing. Now, under the IES, this is under the, you look this up in the IES handbook. The definition of a wall graze as opposed to a wall wash is that the actual luminaire is anywhere from 12 inches to 0 inches from the wall. In this particular case with our perimeter light, the luminaire is mounted to the wall, so it's flush to the wall. Now, this can be regressed into the ceiling. So our perimeter light allows you to regress it so you don't actually see the luminaire. In this particular case, you actually can see the lens. Now, but with wall grazing, we also have optics that allow you to even more evenly graze down the surface of a wall. Like, for example, this picture here, this is a feature wall. You see this brick pattern that it looks really great when you're actually highlighting and capturing all the nooks and crannies on this and all the shadows and whatnot. What's really cool about that, and this, you'll notice running down the center of this luminaire, this is our graze optic. This gets you about a 15-degree tight beam, as opposed to a light, a parabolic lamp that you would just have a wash or a blob that would come out. The graze goes all the way down to the surface of the actual wall that allows you to pull out all those features. It's not a requirement. Some applications you wouldn't want to use a graze optic, but you know, for perimeter lighting and graze optics, that is something that that you would see. So next is, wall washing. Now, wall washing under the IES, a typical wall wash application would be anything from 12 inches or more greater, and it's usually about 12 inches or 1 foot to 3 feet off of a wall. Now, this corridor here is an example of a wall wash. Now, our wall wash system has, you can pendant mount, you can recess it, you can wall mount it. In this particular case, we're illuminating this picture here. Now, a wall wash application, you would be using an asymmetric optic, because if you want to wash this wall here, but you don't want to illuminate the floor, in this particular case, you want this is a recessed luminaire. So you'll notice in this picture, this is a cross-section of our wall washer. To start off, the circuit board is not flat going through a diffuse lens here. It's actually cantilevered on an angle a little bit here. So what's happening is that the light, as you can see from this polar chart, is going out on an angle. Also, we have, and I remember I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, where there are there are films available on the market to offer optics. Well, we actually are using an asymmetric film. So a lot of the old style ways of wall washing using asymmetric required you to have a shield or a kicker coming down, a few inches. A lot of criticism we've heard particularly from architects and end users, is that they don't like the look of that hanging down. If you can imagine, a little kicker hanging down from this application wouldn't look that good. So the way we've done it is we've eliminated that kicker or that shield by having a asymmetric film. So so you'd be looking at what another application, just as an example, is that maybe you had a 7-foot, 8-foot wide corridor. You only have the ability to light or have electricity on the wall. So that's where your junction boxes are, and you wanted to maybe do a retrofit. You could actually put a luminaire on the wall, have the asymmetric optic, illuminate this way. And you would be able to get that 3 to 5 to 6 foot candles on the floor from the wall. And maybe you could have an indirect component that would light up the wall as well, so you don't have a dark spot here. We see that quite a bit, and that's a very common application that you would use for wall washing. Second ago, I mentioned color shift. Well, one of the areas that we see in some of the products that are on the market that are unacceptable is something called color over angle. Now, to start, there's, the binning story. This is something that, if I've heard in the market for 10 plus years now, where actually when you do linear applications, the way you bin your LEDs, or when you buy LEDs from an LED manufacturer, you're actually buying LEDs that come off of a wafer, right? The LED manufacturers don't make LEDs in wafers. The wafers are cut up and then put into LEDs that can be powered, or LED packages that can be powered. Depending on how, when you take LEDs off of a wafer, you're going to get varying color temperatures, or hues rather. A little bit pinkish, a little bit bluish. Maybe you've seen fixtures that have a little bit of a pinkish tint to them, or a little bit of a bluish tint to them. That's done because, now this right here comes off the black body curve. I won't go into the details. That could be a separate presentation. But what to take away from this is that the tighter those LEDs, or the binning of those LEDs that come off of a wafer, the more similar they are. And then once you put those into a fixture, you're not going to see any variation. There's a problem with linear lighting, is that you've got a bunch of LEDs in an array, and if they're illuminating off of the surface, if there's variation, you're going to see it. So under the macadam ellipse system, and this is something you can look up on Wikipedia on how this has come up. I mean, this dates back to the fluorescent and metal halide days, but they reckon that a 2-step macadams is acceptable, and that's what we use on our fixtures, but just keep in mind. But there's also something called color over angle, and that really comes up from the macadams ellipse and how you bin. If the binning, if that hues are too wide, or too varying much on a single fixture, you're going to see pinks and yellows. And sometimes that comes up not from the LED necessarily, it comes up from the optics that are used. So there's a long list of reasons color over angle come up, but in general, in your projects, in most cases, it doesn't or is unacceptable. So it's something that we look at when we bin or choose our LEDs. Another thing, particularly when you're looking at grazing, is the material that you're working with. So it's sometimes hard to control on specifications. A spec will go out. The intention is a certain color of paint or reflective surface that has got a reflectivity, index on it. You're going to expect to get, 0.8 or 0.75, and all of a sudden the interior designer makes a last minute change and you're going to get 0.3. Well, it's going to affect your light output, but particularly for, I think there are a lot of people understand on walls and surfaces like that, but on or ceilings rather. But on walls, on the other hand, it's really good to avoid these kind of things. It's good to do a mock-up, especially when you're dealing with warmer color temperatures. Something we recommend to be able to mock up different materials to make sure the reflectivity is what you look for. And that's what this slide says right here. Okay, so configuration flexibility. And this is something I mentioned that we are a BAA compliant factory. Since we do all of our processes in-house, linear lighting today, architects love to do zigzag pattern squares, X's, Y's, transitions into multiple ceiling types, transitions from ceilings to walls on angles. we're cutting, mitering, and welding all of our extrusions at our factory. We can give you as much flexibility as you want. Not all manufacturers can offer that. This is something we can really be flexible on. The only thing, and this goes back to the drawing, we need to get drawings done when there is custom ceilings or patterns and whatnot. And we get our drawings out really fast so it doesn't hold up your projects while you're trying to verify the geometry. I mentioned control. For us as a manufacturer, this picture here shows a picture of a Lutron Kiwi Vibe sensor. This is a daylight harvesting occupancy sensor. We are not restricted the way we approach the dimming aspect, and particularly sensors. We have a fully integrated driver, but we do not restrict you on your projects on how you're going to be using that sensor. A lot of manufacturers will say that sensor needs to be on one end or only one sensor per run. We can put multiple sensors onto the same fixture. We can designate where they are on the fixture. This fixture has a sensor. We do have an RF sensor only option that will go inside the fixture, so you wouldn't have to see it on the surface in case you have a project that doesn't require that. But flexibility, not only just in construction, like on the slide I showed you in a second ago, but also on the way the sensor works and integrates with the system. We're super flexible with that. We have a 5-year manufacturer warranty, something I highly recommend you ask. There's a couple companies that have 10-year warranties out there. They're very restrictive. I always mention, a warranty is nice, but until you read the terms and conditions on that warranty, I know of a 10-year manufacturer warranty manufacturer, and it comes to mind right now that if you read the terms and conditions, it pretty much says most applications aren't going to apply to that 10-year warranty. So it's something to keep in mind. But ours is very standard, very open 5-year warranty. Okay, so to finish up here, I just want to show you some pictures of some applications. This right here is a new fixture that we're coming out with, and I would love to talk to any specifiers online. I'd love to talk to you and show you samples when we can come by your office. But indirect, as mentioned, doesn't necessarily have to be a perimeter light. It could be on a luminaire itself. Actually, not only do we have this luminaire has an indirect, and I'll show you another picture in a second, an indirect component too on the top, but also on the bottom, the light engine itself is indirect. So the glare, or more specifically, the glare rating on this, which is an IES standard that we see more and more out in the market today, is really, really low. It's a very cool optical design and something we'd love to show you. Some more fixtures in office applications. This is our Lux fixture. This is a perfect example of a wall wash. You've got a pendant fixture that's got a wall wash optic illuminating to a white surface in this particular case, or a surface rather in this particular case, for a whiteboard in a classroom. All right, well, that was my last slide. If there are, and let me go back to my original slide so I can show you my email address. Once again, feel free to reach out to any of the Western folks. You're more than welcome to reach out to me directly if there are any questions. I know everyone is muted, but afterwards I am available. Yes, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.